they file out into line again, of course. Here's Smith, same Smith that we saw come across. Then that'll be Thayer. And then over in the woods, we can walk over in the woods if y'all want to, across 22 and so on. I think we got bigger fish to fry than just go over there and show you a tablet, but we can go over there if you want to. But anyway, Mona, you can get the spacing here. If this is the center of Smith's 3 regiments, then that one right there is the center of Thayer's 3 regiments, and then right across the road in a little ravine over there is Whittlesea's brigade. So you can see the division alignment.
So when they come into Glover Field, then they start.
They fan out into regular line again. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. So you see here, it's talking about this brigade occupies this position, supporting the batteries about 10 a.m. Then advance to the south field. If you read Wallace's report, he's talking about advancing into here. He places his batteries on the forward slope here, keeping his caissons and limbers and so on the reverse slope, as good artillerymen do. And he will shell the Confederate line that's beginning to form on the other side there. This is where Wallace talks about that he got into this big field, Jones Field that we know it is. But he says if look to my right, I'm anchoring my right brigade Whittlesea on Owl Creek, and everything is safe over there. You always want to anchor your flank on something that the enemy cannot turn, which the Confederates did not here. It's an open flank and easily turned. Wallace says, if I look to my left, I see nothing. Kind of Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain at Gettysburg, you know, gentlemen, if you look to your left, you will see nothing. We are the flank. Well, Wallace is not necessarily the left flank of the Union line. He is the right flank of the Union line, but he's not supposed to have nothing on his left flank. Who's supposed to be on his left flank? Sherman, exactly, the Army of the Tennessee. Between here, Wallace's fresh division, which is a comparative term, is Wallace a fresh division?
How much 17
more all day and
forced march pretty much the day before, or half a day, noon till 7 or so on. Sleeping on their arms like that and then cross for 3 hours, what we just crossed. I mean, these guys are getting tired. Now, compared to the Army of the Tennessee, are they fresh? They're fresher. They didn't see any fighting yesterday. But to use the term fresh troops, I'm not sure that's totally accurate. Same thing with Buell's army. Buell's army has been forced marched into this position here, and some units, for instance, portions of Crittenden and McCook's divisions, get to the landing like at daylight and are sent right on into line. So they hadn't had any sleep. At least Wallace's troops have had a little bit of sleep that night. Some of Buell's didn't. They're continuously on the move throughout the night and go right into battle the next morning. But compared to the Army of the Tennessee that fought all day yesterday, endures the horrid gunboat shelling all through the night. And of course Nelson, who did this, says we tried to keep the Confederates awake. Duh, you're keeping everybody awake, you know. And so it's not doing your own side any favors. But through all of that, the Army of the Tennessee that fought yesterday, of course Wallace is part of the Army of the Tennessee, but those forces, Sherman, Hurlbut, 3rd Iowa, where's our 3rd Iowa guy? 3rd Iowa and all those, they are, I think, a little bit gun shy because they lag behind a little bit Buell and Wallace. It's a hole in there that is not keeping pace. They have to cross Tillman Branch just like everybody else does, but they are very, very slow about it. They're tired for one thing, but I think they're just a little bit gun shy. If you read McClernand's report, for instance, he talks about we moved forward a little bit and then we deployed our batteries and we shelled the area in front. Wasn't anything out there, but we shelled the area to make sure. And then we moved forward a little more and we deployed. And although we didn't see anything out there, we deployed the batteries and we shelled the area again. When we got to the lip of Tillman Branch, we wanted to make sure there was nothing on the other side, so we shelled the opposite side. So to deploy, redeploy, deploy the artillery takes a lot of time. So by the time Wallace gets to this position, there is nothing supporting his left flank. And so talk about Wallace lethargic and won't move forward. I wouldn't have moved forward either and opened my left flank when the Army of the Tennessee is the one that really is not keeping pace and is not protecting his flank. Once they come up into line here, then Wallace will begin to think about moving forward. And by that time, of course, the Confederate line has appeared on the other side. Now, once the old units of the Army of the Tennessee trudge into this area, they take this next line of battle, and I tell you what, let's walk just up to the high ground. We'll follow Wallace's line here, and then we'll move over to the next line. But Wallace will kind of be shunning to the side a little bit, to the west, because there are more units coming to take a position Unit of the Army of the Tennessee that has come forward with them. Thayer and Whittlesea will actually be on over. I forgot about that one. But the 14th Missouri will move forward of MacArthur's brigade. But you see Thurber and Thompson, well, the tablet's gone.
That makes me sick.
Broken off tablet. It's just broken and they probably take it in to fix it or something. But you can get a good view here of that next line. If you shield the sun a little bit, you still can't get a very good view. Maybe we will get up in the shade you can, but you can see skipping across on the reverse slope of that hill more of these tablets that will denote the unit position. You can certainly see that artillery, this will be Thompson, Thurber's batteries, move forward again. And you can see those oval tablets there demarking the new Confederate line, or the new Union line, as Wallace with his left covered will begin to move forward then, moving a little bit to the right, and we'll follow that position on over.
Tony, get out of the anthill.
Oh, in the anthill? Yeah. I was talking about as we were coming across, if you didn't, it's a good place to see what's right about. You didn't find that? See the Union line of battle here. See all these oval tablets starting right here with this one, and then there's the artillery, and then right on the hill, and then over on the other hill, on across. This is a good place to see lines of battle and how the units would have been spaced and so on. Now, this tablet position that we were just at is Whittlesea's tablet, and if you go on down the line that is here, and we can just walk over to it and look at timing and so on. About 11 a.m. engaged here, about 11 a.m. 12 to 20 to 78 forward to the right. All right, Whittlesea's position here about 11 a.m. To his right will be Morgan Smith, and then on next will be Thayer. Now, if you're keeping up and
swap down.
Yeah, exactly. It had always been Smith, Thayer, Whittlesea, but now it's Whittlesea, Thayer, Smith, and this is because they're getting edged out, of course, by these other Army of the Tennessee units coming. And so Whittlesea, that's always been on the far flank over there, kind of gets nudged out of position because Wallace, the main division, scoots that direction, so that brigade gets nudged out of position. So they're brought kind of back behind the rear and are holding a little bit of a reserve place here, although they do go into action here that you're talking about. Later, the 20th and the 78th moved to the right of the division, engaged north of McDowell's headquarters. We'll see that later on. The 76th remained on the left of the division and was engaged half a mile south. We'll see that in Crescent Field. So, now the division is Whittlesea, Smith, Thayer, instead of Smith, Thayer, Whittlesea. We're going to see the importance of that as we're going up to the picnic area here. And had we more daylight, we probably would have followed it, but we are getting close to 4, and we're getting closer to dark. We've only got about another hour, and we got a ways to go. We could have followed it down Whittlesea and Thayer through those ravines and so on, and followed them on across. But I wanted you to see this. This is the importance. This is strike number 2. Number 1, he outflanked Pond's brigade, right? And sent them really. Well, when they meet this heavier Confederate line that consists of pretty much the entire army, then they will have to do something else, either attack straight up the gut or do something. Here's the Confederate lines. 22nd Alabama here was at 1st Louisiana, as I said. If you start here, and we actually did this one time. That was passive. Didn't we do a hike on the second day one time, and we followed the whole Confederate line? If you start here, you can trace the Confederate line all the way across the battlefield to Albert Sidney Johnson's death site, the tent hospital site, Chalmers Brigade over there. And you can follow that line, but it ends right here. The Confederates do not have enough men on the second day to reach from creek to creek like the Federals had the day before. how far is Owl Creek? I mean, you can see how far the picnic area goes. Owl Creek is off those bluffs there, but there's no way they can reach that far. They simply do not have enough men. As the Confederates are falling back on the second day, the battlefield is widening. And as a result, it takes more men to cover the space. So Bragg, who is in command in this sector, tries to land or rest his flank, which is right here on this little creek that we just crossed. You can tell we just came across it. It wasn't much of a creek, but it gets bigger as it goes toward Owl Creek, of course. That's where he's trying to rest his flank, hoping that will be a big enough obstacle that the Federals can't get through, and that will protect his flank. Well, we see what happened. Thayer and Smith, of course, move forward. You can see Thayer's tablet right there, just right across the road. I don't think there's any need for us to walk over there, because you've seen the tablets and you can see them good here. If you look just past the dumpster, right to the right of the dumpster, you see that other tablet. That is Thayer's brigade. Firstman, Nebraska, and all those folks. So look at the orientation of the line. Where was Whittlesea we just left? Right back over here. Where is Smith and Thayer? Right there. So essentially the line doing what? About this. Where's the Confederate line? Right there. So what has Wallace done yet again? He has gotten on the flank of the Confederate line. And these boys say, we got to get out of here. There's no way we're going to hold this. And as a result, this whole left wing of the Confederate Army falls back. Now, what's been going on for the rest of the Confederate line over there, and we talked about this in the hike we did. Were you Alabamans on that hike when we did the second day?
I don't think so.
It's probably been 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Ours was the Chalmers.
Chalmers was the first y'all here. I forget what we did the first day, the first half of the day. I think we did Albert Sidney Johnson's footprints. I think
we did Beauregard. Beauregard.
Oh, we did Beauregard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the second day we did Beauregard. At any rate, what has been going on? The Army of the Ohio, Buell's army, has been battering themselves basically. They have been battering themselves against the Confederate line over near the Peach Orchard and Daniel Davis wheat field and all of that. In the center, the Hornet's Nest, Ruggles Battery Line, where Breckinridge's corps is. Crittenden and McCook have been battering themselves against that line, never able to move it back, never able to take it by front assault. Here, even in Jones Field, the Army of the Tennessee, McClernand and Sherman will batter themselves against Hardee's corps, although Hardee is on the other end of the line, but Wood's brigade, Shaver and Claiborne, they batter themselves against it. And what is remarkable to me, and I talked about it that day in the book and all that, but the Confederates even have enough firepower and or whatever left to counterattack those Union advances. And that just is amazing to look at kind of the lethargy of the Army of the Tennessee on the second day, but to compare that with what the Confederates still have left. I think it may be a little bit of Sherman and McClernand and Hurlbut saying, well, we got fresh boys here, let's let them do the heavy lifting. You know, the Confederates don't have any fresh boys, they got to do their own heavy lifting. And so to be able to counterattack, even here in Jones Field, there's some counterattacks and so on. So the point is, all of this taken as a whole, the Federals, even the Frenchmen's of Buell's army, never able to move that Confederate line back by frontal assault. Never able to. That where the line begins about 9 a.m. that morning, it's still there about 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. That afternoon over on that right flank. Where the Confederates are forced back on this western side is a result of what? Maneuver and Wallace outflanking them rather than these frontal assaults, and Wallace saves a lot of troops and less casualties because of it, but he's faulty. So getting on this flank here, and you can see it vividly the way the tablets are laid out here and where the Confederate line is and so on. It is you know, amazing that he's able to get on this flank for a second time. Now we're going to move forward and we're going to see it for a third time as we get into Crescent Field, which you can see just in front. Any questions here? Okay, let's be very careful, I guess, move on the side of the road. And if you look to my right here, you will see the Ohio Monument down in the woods. Well, you have to go back here just a tad, about to right here, and you'll see the Ohio Monument. 76, 78, one or the other. That's part of Whittlesea that has been shunted off. Those two regiments that we talked about go back over to the right flank, and one regiment, that Ohio regiment, stays over here. So that is the flank then of Wallace's division, and then you come into, of course, Smith's brigade with the 11th Indiana. That's Lew Wallace's old regiment. He was colonel of this, of course. Next will be the 24th Indiana, and then the tablet down there. And we'll walk this line. Will be the 8th Missouri. Missouri does not place monuments, of course, to their individual troops, so they only have a tablet, whereas the Indianans here have monuments. Now, the original commissions, the state commissions, placed their monuments at what they felt like was the unit's heaviest fighting or most important fighting, and so Indiana chooses to put their monuments here on Wallace's third line, basically, and here in Crescent Field. Now, Wallace's report and his autobiography, you know, he's a writer. You got to watch these writers and so on. Talking about Indiana, the Crescent Field here and so on. He talks about moving across the hillocks of Crescent Field. When's the last time you used the word hillock in describing something? You know, we went across the hillocks. Painting a picture, painting a panorama. Yes, he was. Of course, this is a first day tablet here for McDowell's brigade as they're scooting out of the way here. So we'll follow along with Wallace's line here. Note, of course, the sun is setting that direction here in what month is it? November. We're not. I don't think due west. Who's got a compass on your phone? You got one?
I have an actual compass.
You've got an actual compass. Which way is west? West is
that way. Back here behind me.
Back this direction, yeah. So Wallace's line is facing which direction? Southwest, kind of. So where's the Confederate line? It is back that direction, facing more north, maybe northwest. At any rate, the point is, Wallace has once again, this is strike number 3, not strike, but whatever. This is flanking maneuver number 3, and he gets on the flank of the Confederate line here once more. So you can see how he is maneuvering, and each time it's almost like Grant in Virginia, the overland campaign. You know, when Lee will take a position at Wilderness, what will Grant do? Move by the left flank. Lee will move to stop him at Spotsylvania, and Grant will do what? Move by the left flank. Lee will move to stop him at Cold Harbor, North Anna, and then Cold Harbor. Each time Grant keeps moving around that left flank. And that's almost what Wallace is doing here. He's moving around the Confederate left flank time and again, and he keeps outflanking the guys, the Confederates here. And this is what keeps leveraging this Confederate line out of position after position after position. First of all, Pond's brigade, then the main line at Jones Field, and then this line here. And by the time Wallace moves on to the next line, the Confederates have fallen back all the way to Shiloh Church. And this time, the rest of the Confederate line has to fall back as well. By this time, your left keeps falling back, and eventually you got to pull the right back with it. So all those attacks that go on at the Peach Orchard and all that against the Confederate right are never successful, but all of a sudden the Confederate right starts pulling off and pulling back because Wallace has leveraged the Confederate left out of position, and they got to keep it somewhat in semblance there, and steadily moving back toward Shiloh Church. Any questions here on this flank? All right, let's walk down the line just to see it, and we'll get to Highway 22 there and see the regiments on the other side. And actually, we'll go out there because you don't see that very often.
Is that where we were by car that you can see back there?
Of course, the 8th Missouri, I talked about they didn't have a tablet or didn't have a monument because Missouri doesn't put the monuments up. But you can see the general line of battle as it is conforming, of course, to the ridge. The line is kind of a little amphitheater there, a little bit. And we'll continue on into the woods here with, was that the 58th Ohio, I believe we'll look. When I said that Wallace's line is facing southwest, it's actually facing southeast. and you know, the compass and so on. The Confederates facing more north, generally north, and they're facing southeast instead of southwest. Ed brought that to our attention. So when your wife tells you you're wrong all the time, that's not true. You are right some of the time.
On this one time.
Even the clock's right twice a day, you know, when it's broken. But
so I've got one more to go to get even with the clock.
One more to go for today. So so they will be facing southeast instead of southwest. The point is, obviously, they're again crossing the T. In naval parlance. You're familiar with Lord Nelson at Trafalgar, or Oldendorf at Lady Gulf, or Napoleon on land, or whatever. When you cross that T, when you outflank that enemy line, that's of course what Wallace is doing here. Make sure you get that in there. It used to not be part of the park. In fact, there was a Turks Cross here. Probably when we go back, we'll go on the road, and there's a house out here. It's park housing now, a ranger lives in. But that was the parsonage for the Turks Cross. And
that's where he dumped his wine bottles?
I'm not sure all that was his. The point is, there are people who used to live out here on non-park land.
There was a store right across.
Yeah.
I can't think of her name now. When she did the guiding, she did the little booklet.
Right, yeah.
Benny, Mr. Augusta Benny.
Okay.
And she had a little store and gas station for a little while, and then almost at the corner, there used to be like a little store cafe.
Store there, and still some curb out in the middle of the woods there. That.
So I figured some of this trash is from those houses.
Very well been. All right, first Nebraska, and you see the Indiana monuments over here. Of course, we're getting into Sayers Brigade now. But anyway, flag on the look on goes a little off. Good idea. Saying it's kind of trivial, like trivial pursuit kind of thing, but mention something, and you never know somebody will hear you talking. Later on in Western Theater, Manning Force is a name that you will run into at Vicksburg. Later on, the General, the Atlanta campaign, and all that. Manning Force later on writes a history of this campaign from Fort Henry to Corinth. He calls it one of the Scribner's histories. So Manning Force is a name you may run into. But here they hold the right flank. If you look here, we're not far from Owl Creek Bottom out there. And if you look through the woods right here, you'll see the next Ohio regiment. So had we come straight through the woods, instead of kind of diving up a little bit, we would have come right there and here. So the general picture of Wallace's division now is something like this. Now there's the Hamburg-Purdy Road. The Confederate line is something like this, and we're like this. So again, we have crossed that T and are driving the Confederates back. Now you won't see any Confederate tablets out there on this third line. Very similar to what we saw with Pond's Brigade, and then what we saw with the 22nd Alabama and the 1st Louisiana, and so on with Gladden's Brigade there. You won't see the Confederate line marked out here on this third line, simply because the Park Commission, if they could not absolutely, definitively determine where a unit was, they don't put a marker. They will not mark something unless they're absolutely sure. And so this is one of those instances. We know that there's the Confederate line out there that Wallace flanked. But they just didn't know exactly where it was, didn't have the information, and if you read the second day reports of Shiloh, they're very muddled, particularly the farther you go into the second day. And so it's very difficult to determine where things are and all that. So the Park Commission chose not to mark something with the possibility of marking it wrong. They'd rather not mark it at all.
The read maps aren't as detailed on the second day
Not
either.
nearly as detailed on the second day. I've mentioned this a lot, but if you read the first day reports, almost all the commanders are very meticulous about, we crossed this so-and-so field, and they sometimes name the field or the Farmer Duncan or something, and we moved 350 yards to the north and came across this creek that ran southwest to north, so they're very meticulous and so on. Beginning of the second day, some of that, but by the time you get to the end of the second day, they just kind of, we moved forward and then moved over to the right, and then we moved forward again, and you just, I don't know if their brains were going mush at that point from writing, or if their brains were going mush from that point of fighting for, 36 hours or so, or exactly what's going on, but it all just kind of mushes together. And I found it extremely difficult to piece together second day stuff about, and some of it I actually mentioned in the book. It's hard to determine. We know Confederates counterattacked the Union advance all along this line on the second day. We know the Federals attacked the Confederate line all along this line on the second day, but determining which came first, whether the Confederates counterattacked first and the Federals attacked, or the Federals attacked and the Confederates counterattacked, is extremely difficult. Some places you can establish that they met both going forward at the same time, you know, and they actually describe that. But in other instances, it's difficult to reconcile the reports chronologically. It's not difficult to reconcile where they are and what's happening and so on, but actually chronologically, maybe which occurred in front of each other is somewhat difficult. So I have no Confederate line to show you here, but we're going to walk back. This is pretty much the last monument, so we'll see. So we'll be walking back toward the regular Confederate line. And of course, by the time we get to Water Oaks Pond in that area near the church, we have the Confederate line established, and we know basically where it was there. So Wallace is outflanking here. Now, his next position, of course, will be near Shiloh Church. He will move on through the camps of Sherman's division, Buckland's brigade, and Hildebrand's brigade, actually cross for some distance Shiloh Branch, and we'll move toward that last Confederate defensive line on that ridge overlooking Shiloh Branch to the south. But he will never contest it or anything like that. So this will be Wallace's last major move of the day. But 3 times he has leveraged the Confederate left out of position, forcing it to fall back, and that forces the Confederate right to fall back. So, you know, I won't go so far as to say that Lew Wallace is the player of the game on the second day or anything like that, but I am convinced he does what no other Federal commander can do on that second day, and that is move the Confederate line back, and he does it 3 times. And so I think I will go so far as to say that some who really jump on Wallace on the second day and you know, he was lethargic and didn't fight and scared to fight and all that, basing that on the first day that he was lost, I think there's a whole lot of myth out there about Lew Wallace, and I don't think he gets, think he gets a bum rap, and I don't think he gets near the credit that he deserves, particularly on the second day. So we have still a ways to go. Any questions here?
Yeah.
You got a question?
So a while ago, Whittlesea got squeezed and moved over in. When did you come to these troops?
They would come back on this line here from Jones Field.
From the middle position in there.
From the movement from Jones Field to here, yes. These 2 Ohio regiments will move back over here, and that other one that I showed you in Crescent Field will stay on that left flank. Exactly. Yeah. So you're seeing some of the chaos in even Wallace's well-handled division. You're seeing some of the chaos due to geography and terrain and all that. Alrighty, we just head cross country here, and we probably won't stop again until we get to the church in our cars.